Welcome to Be Provided Conservation Radio, sharing stories and information about the environment, wildlife, and the people who are dedicating their lives to protect the world for future generations. These inspirational stories will take you from the Santa Cruz Mountains to remote areas of Africa.
Welcome to Be Provided Conservation Radio, everyone. I am your host, Marcia Civic. In today's episode, I am fortunate to be speaking with Allyson Jayne Miller. Not only is she a fellow wildlife artist, she also loves big cats. She is known in her community as the Barefoot Ecologist. Allyson has won awards for her riparian restoration work and permaculture farming on a circa 1800 Oregon pioneer homestead called Grape Lane Poultry Farm. She is also the founding director of ORECAT, or known as Oregon Cougar Action Team, which is a 501c3 educational nonprofit dedicated to the protection of Oregon's cougars, wolves, and bear. So thank you for joining us in this conversation with Allyson Jayne Miller. And as our phone conversation continued, I realized we had so much in common. We talked for quite a while, and as you know, I'm trying to keep these shows down so we can have them in good edible bites, maybe as we're listening on our commutes and all that. So I had to do some creative editing, and it's good experience for me here. So anyways, I welcomed Allyson to the show, and as we go forward, we'll hear about Allyson and how she grew up and where she grew up and got started in this conservation world. So thank you for listening.
It is an absolute honor to be here with you and to be part of the lives of the people who are your audience. It's a wonderful group of people, and I appreciate all of you being here with the both of us.
Thank you, Allyson. I do agree. Everybody out there is wonderful, and thank you for all you're doing as well. And I noticed on your website you have a message I found compelling, a written message. You write about falling into an epiphany instead of just falling in love. And you write, when you fall into an epiphany, you will never view the ecologies and animals as a common occurrence or experience again. You will love them as if your life depended on it. So I ask, so how did you fall into your epiphany?
Well, I had the rare opportunity of having, it was the United States' first hippie, which was my father. But we were very gifted to be able to live on a 7,000-acre cattle ranch back when a middle-class American family could own a piece of real estate like that and call it home. And we had a 145-acre lake on it. We had the 7,000 acres, and it was called Stuckel Mountain Nuss Lake. And you can Google those on the Internet now. And when we were there, a tragedy of the commons was unfolding under our eyes, but we didn't see it. It was very hard for the human eye to see this tragedy happen, the trophic cascade decline happen, and the tragedy of the commons. And so, but my father, in his wisdom, filled our minds with Aldo Leopold's writings, such as the Sand County Almanac. And he managed the ecology and the infrastructure of our ranching operations to coexist together. And so we had old cougar on our property that we did not kill. And we did not lose any livestock to them because we also did not shoot the deer and the elk. And so there was a balance here. And Dad always added some extra acre or two of grain because he knew the deer would be in that grain field. And so we learned to manage and coexist with the ecosystems there, and we learned to use them as partners, as tools to be able to do that. And we did not turn them into objects. We did not consider them to be pests at all. They were part of our culture that were important. And Dad's foundation of Aldo Leopold set the course of my life. And I became very intimate with the wilderness there. It was a comfort zone for me. It was traumatizing to leave that. I had anxiety attacks, literally, when I had to step into the anthropocentric world of paying my way through college in the military. And then upon graduation, I was scooped up into the timber industry and then directly into the oil cartel industry out of Saudi Arabia, Dhahran. So, I saw the underbelly of corporations and the policies and the lobbying that supports that. But never did I forget in the back of my mind the elements that I learned, the compassion and the empathy that I learned to coexist with nature. And again, when you mentioned the artwork, that spiritually really cemented it as a child also, was reproducing that creation in my mind, and it came in my heart first, and then it went through my mind and out into artwork. And so, spiritually sense, that really sets the tone.
So it sounds like you had this amazing youth growing up on a ranch with this father who had some great insight for his time, which seems amazing. He sounds like a great man and a smart man. And you went all over the world in a world that was completely different than what you grew up with. And with what you are doing now, you came back to it. So how did you come back?
So I managed to make it through all of those elements in life, holding on to the core values of what my father taught me and what the ranch taught me, and the wildlife there. And so, disillusioned, I came back to Oregon and settled in the Willamette Valley, and by serendipity managed to get a small farm. And we inherited it. I got married, and my husband inherited a small farm that had been in his family since 1915, but it had been a farm since 1836. And so I called up my dad, and I said, Dad, what do I do with this farm? It's about the size of our backyard. What, 10 acres? And my dad said to me, take care of the land, and the land will take care of you. And I just sat back and thought about that, and it really hit the ballpark home. So in doing that, I wrote for grants with the Marion Soil and Water Conservation District. Well, actually, stepping back further, before I did that, I contacted the state of Oregon because I thought it would be nice to start a rehab here for wildlife. It was the perfect setting. And the gentleman came out, and he looked at our property at the Savannah Oaks there, and he said, wow, you've got rare Savannah Oaks. There's less than 1% of these left in the valley. And I said, wow, okay. He says, you can go get grants for that. So I went to Marion Soil and Water Conservation District and ultimately ended up with, all told, end product, $100,000 in grants to revitalize the farm, Oregon Tilth Organic, into a permaculture program that coexisted with the ecosystems. Everything was done in miniature that I had learned on the ranch. And so we planted 1,000 trees. We put up, water catchments and bird houses, all of these things to build an infrastructure for which to be able to coexist with this on this small piece of property. And it became very profitable. And it became very exciting because we began to see a lot of the wildlife come back, the infrastructure of the trophic cascades, the predators and the subspecies and the mesopredators. But I also learned my first journey towards protecting Oregon's cougar, of course, was my experience on the cattle ranch of, living with the old cougar that managed the younger cougars and kept populations in control. And because cougar are an umbrella species and a keystone species, there was that balance on our ranch. And I experienced that. I was on top of our hillside in the dark, after dark, very dark, no outside lights, around or anything. And I had been shearing my 2 llama by hand. And of course, I've decided that llama really don't exist. They're all fluff. They're all hair. But it was after dark, and I had this huge bundle of wool that I was carrying down the hillside. I couldn't see, so I'm feeling my way, which was stupid. But I couldn't see, but I'm starting to hear a rustle next to me. And as I moved, it moved. If I stopped, it stopped. And I thought of my house cat. I said, Muffy, is that you? I thought, God, Muffy, you're sure making a lot of racket. But then I thought, if it's a person, I'm in trouble. But if it's an animal, I'm okay. Because my dad taught me never to be afraid. So they didn't get that scent of fear. And I'm shuffling along, and it's shuffling along with me. And I get down to the front porch and put everything down and reach in and flip on the light to see if I could see anything. And I couldn't. But the next day I went out, and right next to me, I'd say within 10 feet, were cougar tracks. And it wasn't the first time that I'd been around cougar, because we had them on our cattle ranch too. But Dad always said, just leave them alone, they'll leave you alone. He said, don't run, don't act like an animal, and don't fall off your horse. He said it's a long climb back up, because I was 5 years old when he told me that. 5. You know, it was a completely different world then. But life was an adventure to be lived, not a problem to be solved, and we had a great life.
Was there a trigger or a moment that you recall that got you wanting to do more for these cougars in your area and to start protecting them, and to, you know, how you came about with creating the Oregon Cougar Action Team?
We ran into a woman who witnessed the poaching of a lactating cougar, where 2 hunters took her kittens, her little spotted kittens, and gutted her and took her organs and left her hanging in the tree for ODFW to pick up. Well, Jim and I, we knew this woman, and we knew she was distraught. We got everything done. So we definitely went, and this was shortly after my experience on the farm. We headed down to ODFW and went in and had a meeting with Ron Anglin. And it was supposed to be a 15-minute meeting, but when he realized the caliber that he was talking to of, you know, understanding and knowledge, it turned into a 45-minute meeting. And it was a real spiritual moment for me. I crossed that threshold. I crossed the threshold of ODFW, and I told Jim, when I cross this threshold, I am going to do everything I can to protect Oregon's cougar. This will not happen on my timeline to another cougar like this. And so, you know, and I had done this earlier in my life. I dedicated myself to that. Dad and I, we were always adventurous together. We wanted to climb Fort Rock. So, you know, at 11 years old, Dad and I trotted out there to Fort Rock and scrambled up a funnel on Fort Rock, where I understand now people fall off and die. And we were in cowboy boots, and we scrambled up there. And at the top, I built a shrine. And, of course, Dad didn't understand what I was doing, because I was born a spiritual person. Built a shrine and looked to the east and the west and the south and the north, and praying to God that I would take care of his animals, and took off the necklace and put it on the shrine. And then we climbed down. Well, my I became a woman when I hit the base of that Fort Rock. My childhood was over at that point. And that is, you know, Native American, that kind of seals the deal. So, you know, I knew what I was doing when I crossed that threshold at ODFW. I said, okay, this is it. This is what I'm going to be doing. Within 42 hours, I had connected with other conservation people and found information and got some consulting and got help. And I began to put ORECAT together. I put passion. Passion was what was driving me. So I made a lot of mistakes because passion was driving me. I put the cart before the horse and started ORECAT before I really had the experience to do anything like that at all. Both the not-for-profit, both the funding, both the 501c3, both the biology and all the technical aspects of representing the cougar. I had the passion and I had the spiritual sense. So I deadheaded into this. I didn't even understand what it was to be a citizen scientist. All this came later. But again, I'm a spiritual person, and when you follow your instincts, when you follow even your passion, things can open up in the most amazing ways. Within 2 weeks, I had contacted a university, Linfield, I think it was, and they said, we have a program here with students who come from underprivileged neighborhoods and economics who, in exchange for getting their bachelor's degree, they have to provide something back to the public. And here's a young man here who said he just finished law school. He will put together your 501c3, state and federal 501c3 foundation for ORECAT. Wow. And Dr. Lori Marker was the one that said you should call it ORECAT rather than Oregon Cougar Action Team, but ORECAT. So we designed, it was her influence to use ORECAT. And all this wonderful energy began to happen. And people in the village would step forward and add a little bit here and a little bit there, and it would blossom. Within a month, I had ORECAT going, and then guess what? Channel 2 News called us and said, we don't like Ron Anglin. He lied to us. Yes, they said that to me. And and actually they came out, he came out just, I apologize for saying it, hell-bent for leather to my farm. This investigative reporter just ticked off at Ron Anglin over a cougar kitten called Lucky. That is the K2 News investigative reporter. It is on our website. The YouTube is there on our website. You can go and click on that. And he came out here to interview me. And, of course, I was very naive in this conservation world as to, political conduct, kind of things you want to say, kind of enemies you don't want to make. So he came out here. And we're talking away. It was a muddy, wet day also. It really was not a pretty time on the farm. And we're talking away, and that was when my hair was dark. I'm gray now, silver. And we're talking away. At the end of it, he says, Jayne Miller. And I went by my middle name at that time, Jayne Miller, because it was advised that I did that because we were concerned about hound hunters and people with firearms finding me. And the attorney that put our 501c3 together and another organization suggested that. But legally, my name is Allyson Jayne Miller. And now that I'm published and I have my master's degrees are coming together here this fall, both of them. I finished one, but the second one I have 2 credits left coming together this fall. I'm going by Allyson Miller. So look out, everybody.
So what was the result of this television interview?
So anyway, he came out here and he said, I think it was Tom Thompson. His name is there on the YouTube. Jayne Miller started ORECAT to, I think it was, attack the very heart of ODFW's Cougar Management Plan. And of course, now, I had no idea he was going to say that. So now I'm on ODFW's hit list, literally. And wherever I go to give presentations or for a long time, and whatever news article got into the newspaper, ODFW was there. But all of this was a learning curve.
Yeah, that's a learning curve indeed. You were actually threatened and you had some property damage, I believe, when we were talking earlier, and that's really scary.
Oh, yes. We had $25,000 worth of arson done to our property. When I killed I killed about 6 cougar bills. I was very instrumental in what I had to say. And I had not even planned to be there to testify. And one particular Fed was really passionate about my identity of addressing other issues of why cougar are ending up in Oregon where they shouldn't be with people. But he called me up and said, there's a senator that wants to talk to you about the cougar population model count that you say is wrong. And I said, yes, it is wrong. So the senator, he called me into his office, and that was the state legislature the year I was not going to testify because all the bigwigs were there, all the big organizations. I figured they didn't need little small potatoes me. But the FBI called me in, and of course, when I stepped in the door, the gentleman that I work with stood up immediately and shook my hand, and introduced himself as another name. So I got it. Okay, we don't know each other. And we sat down, and that senator just grilled me every which way but loose as to the population model count. And I was able to convince him with the math that it was not correct. And then the FBI dude said, you will be testifying, right? So I said, yes, I guess I am. I was wearing a pink jean suit, and I had my hair up with a pink bow or whatever, totally inappropriate to be doing anything business. In I go, and I flipped those 6 bills. And people in the larger conservation folks were thanking me for being there. That time they did, and I really appreciated that. But the next day we were arson, $25,000 worth of arson on our property. And, and my bachelor's degree is in fire and life safety, and so I was gone, working, and I got home after dark and didn't realize it had happened. And, my husband works graveyard also for the federal government. He came in the next morning with a mocha frappuccino, woke me up, said, here, we've had a fire, and ran out of the house. And so I jump out of bed and I go running out, and they had, it was pretty bad. And so I had a police report And so I was able to track that police report to a source that was where they used a vehicle to start this fire, to the source. And I said, I have a bachelor's degree in fire and life safety, and I can tell that there was a catalyst in this other than a gas tank, other than a full gas tank. And it was very chilling. He said, you do know that I'm this area's president for the Safari Club International, and you have ODFW people living all around you.
Wow, that sounded like a pretty obvious threat.
And I said, well, I guess I'll see you next state legislature. I said, you're going to have to do a lot more than that. And so, that's the way it is, and I'm just, that has been the reality of what it has been for me to have ORECAT. It has not, I don't get paid, and I also don't get paid as a lobbyist at all. It has taken a big sacrifice to do this. And I'm not a large organization for which I can get protection. I know other mountain lion foundations and everything have had bullets go through glass windows and things like that in their office. So it's not uncommon for this to happen.
I'm always shocked when I hear stories like that, of people targeting conservation groups and threatening them. But unfortunately, it is a story I hear far too often. And getting back to more directly about ORECATs, what is the goal for you in ORECATs?
ORECAT has always been small. We've always been rugged. We've always been boots on the ground. Again, we're not the forefront for getting funds. We're focusing on the education. We're focusing on what we can give the people. We're focusing on helping Oregonians think like an ecologist and be citizen scientists. That's our goal with ORECAT. That's my goal as a human being. And those are the ripple effects I want to leave when I'm long gone off this face of the earth, is that I have influenced people who will be protecting our cougars and our wildlife and planting trees and leaving a legacy like that behind.
So what challenges, besides some threats that you've received, have ORECATs faced in order to get this going and get it running?
The responses I was getting from the system that wanted to kill the cougars, and also, because we are rugged, we are small, a lot of folks kind of stand back and say, well, yeah, but we have a different approach to dealing with our conservation issues. The larger organizations do. And so, they're bringing in funds that they have to, they're bringing in funds. We don't always get the funds because we're a little bit radical, but we get the job done. Nonetheless, we get the job done.
Are the cougar in Oregon, are they facing challenges of being poached? Do they go into the wild pet trade, or what happens with them?
We start at Measure 18, which says we're going to ban hound hunting now, which was a good plan, frankly. But ODFW panicked because that was their bread and butter. And the hound hunters panicked because since the conception of killing cougar, they have been on a black market of some sort. And I have a book from the 1930s written by the Federal Fish and Wildlife of Oregonian hunters, hound hunters, holding up cougar kittens, live kittens, to sell. What do you think happened to those two cougars that were killed by those two hunters, and the mother was hung on the tree and gutted? Her organs were sold in the black market, and so were the two kittens. And this goes on in Oregon quite a bit. And poaching, the primary tool for poachers are hound dogs, and the hound dogs are brutally treated. You just don't, you're brutally treated. So we go to this graft, and we have the hound hunting, and it's stopped. And then ODFW changes their internal policy making, and they allow open season all year long. They change their policy. They reduce the cost of killing cougar, the tags, and they make all these internal changes, and suddenly killing cougar starts to skyrocket. And we are killing more cougar at this point over the years, over the next 10 years from that Measure 18 than we were in the history of Oregon. And so, and what do you think? Another graph that I did, what do you think is ticking right along with that graft, going right along with that mortality kill rate. What do you think that could be? It's Lyme disease. Lyme disease erupted right after we started prolifically killing the cougar. Lyme disease.
So this really leads me into what I wanted to talk to you about today as well, and talk about your research that you are doing for school and for ORECATs, and talk a little bit more about the relationship with the cougar and Lyme disease.
Oh, yeah, but I can see this, and in my studies, I picked the provisioning services that cougar offer human well-being, which for me, for my thesis, is Lyme disease, pinion disease, and chronic wasting disease, those three elements. And so my study has been that, and it's been phenomenal. It's been amazing. I did a qualitative research study summer before last summer actually, and it was amazing when I did this public qualitative research work that it was the hunters who wanted more research work done on the how cougar can mitigate human exposure to Lyme disease, which is connected to an amazing amount of economic loss just in Oregon. It's billions of dollars. In the United States, it's up into the trillions. I take that back. I'm sorry. In the United States, it's about 712 million, and in global in the United States. And the Millennium Assessment Report says that globally, Lyme disease is caused because we remove the top apex predators from the ecosystems. And of course, when we remove cougar, this happens. If you look at ODF&W's cougar harvest sites, the map of their cougar harvest sites, especially over the years, because it does take years for trophic cascades to decline. But over the years, you look at their harvest rates, and then you overlay the Oregon State Lyme disease report map, where people have reported getting Lyme disease. Those almost match. It's close enough that we really do need peer-reviewed research work on this. Close enough, because in Oregon there are most of the people who have Lyme disease in Oregon have not even been diagnosed. They have a very different, so this could be pandemic. And then getting back to the cougar kittens, because I mentioned earlier about the cougar kittens, this plays right into that scenario of Lyme disease. ODFW says they have 6,000, 7,000 cougar, okay? And if you go to page 51 of their ODFW 2017 Cougar Management Plan, it actually states there, give or take, 3,300 adult cougar. And so, they're counting about 3,000 to 4,000 cougar kittens, which either have never been born or have already died, because there is an incredibly high mortality rate of cougar kittens. Not just the kittens, but deer and elk and all the other game animals. But they don't count the elk calves. They don't count the fawns. It would be phenomenal if they did. But the elk calves and the elk fawns are hosts for Lyme disease, along with their adult parent. Cougar kittens don't become efficient in dealing with that until they're about 2 years old. And, and so people say, well, the mesopredators, coyotes can take care of that and everything. However, coyotes are number one on the livestock predators. They kill more livestock than bobcat and cougar combined. Pet domestic dogs are right under that, right under coyote are pet domestic dogs. So coyote kill more livestock, dogs kill more livestock, then the cougar, and then the wolves.
Well, it makes perfect sense. Eliminating the top predator, like a cougar, would affect the numbers of the deer and elk to increase. And these are definitely known to be host to ticks with Lyme disease. So that makes sense, but I think that's a great study, worthwhile in pursuing more, and I hope we get a chance to talk about it in the future here. But before we run out of time, I want to hear about some other fun, positive things that you are doing with ORECATs.
I started a Pyrenees Dog Program where ORECAT, I really love it. We've gifted 5 dogs now to sustainable farmers throughout Oregon so they can coexist with their small subsistence farming operation like mine is, and coexist in the ecosystems, coexist with predators, because it's not just cougar. They've got coyotes and everything out there too. The fact is, I have another breeder today who wants to work with us, and we're going to go interview his facilities. We are very careful to make sure it's not a puppy mill operation. We're very careful on the bloodline of the dogs and how they're treated, because that's very important. So, and again, that goes back to the cougar kittens. When they are orphaned, they're experiencing PTSD. They're cold, they're hungry, they're alone, they've got PTSD, and we kill them. Same thing with how I want my dogs for ORECAT. I want to make sure how they're treated, very compassionately, very kindly, very respectfully, because that's important for the kind of dog that I want to give to the kind of people that I want to have that dog. And we've gifted 5 so far, and they're doing wonderful. And we have a follow-up program, and we get donations. It costs us about $300 to place a dog. That's just paying for the dog. We don't get paid. We're all volunteers. That's just the way ORECAT will always be. And so all the money goes right back in to Oregonians' needs and the Cougars' needs. And Oregonian they need these dogs. The Cougars need these dogs because it gives them a perimeter then that they can live with and coexist with. And so we have that program, and it's been a very exciting program, and we're very happy to offer it for people. And so that's just one of the things that I want ORECAT to be able to offer Oregonians.
What else would you like ORECATs to offer for Oregonians?
I want to be able to offer here, as soon as I graduate, training programs to make citizen scientists. I think, besides changing ODFW into Oregon's Ecosystem Sustainability Department, I would like to have every rancher, every landowner, every hunter, every fisherman have to pass a certification program to think like an ecologist before they do anything out there in those ecosystems. Because, we can no longer have this Euro-Western American cowboy mentality anymore and expect to be able to mitigate to mitigate climate change and have a future for the human species. We will not exist with the status quo. That's it.
Yeah. On that note, I always like to ask, what gives you hope, and leave a message out there to our listeners and to the world of something that they can do to help and be hopeful for as well.
My hope for the future are our youth. I think they get it. Even though they don't understand the ecologies that they've lost because they've never seen them, they know it's not good. And what gives me hope for the future are people who are able to show compassion, kindness, intellect. They seem to hold the potential to alter time. And with that comes behaviors such as planting trees and protecting the cougar and protecting the species and doing their share for what is right. Being a citizen scientist and believing in yourself and whatever it is that you can contribute is my hope for the future. Learning to think like an ecologist, asking the questions, reading the books, the literature. Oregon State University has a Tropic Cascade website for free for the public. Yep, for free for the public. Go there, read that material because it's there for you. Organizations like ORECAT are there for you. Use us. Ask the question. We will be happy to help you think like an ecologist and be a citizen scientist and make decisions, even if all you've got is your backyard or a balcony. We will help you find ways to contribute back.
Well, Allyson, as much as I hate to say it, I think we are out of time. And I just wanted to thank you for being on the show today and for all the work you're doing. And I hope that we can catch up in the near future with another show and maybe find out a little bit more what is going on with the research that you're doing as it relates to Lyme disease and the cougar population. So thank you again. And listeners out there in the Bay Area, I wanted to let you know that the Northern California chapter of the Cheetah Conservation Fund and the Monterey Bay chapter of the Cheetah Conservation Fund are hosting a very fun and informative event at the Rio Theater in Santa Cruz, California on October 8th. And this event is from 7 to 9 p.m., and it is definitely very kid-friendly, and we will be screening Born to Explore's film called Namibia, Land of the Cheetah. And we will have, as a special treat, we'll have Dr. Lori Marker, the founding director of the Cheetah Conservation Fund, just having a discussion at the end, answering questions, signing books, and she will be talking to us also on how some of her conservation work with cheetah can be transformed into helping our own cougar, which relates to some of the show that we were talking about today. And as well, we will be having in the lobby, we will be having the Monterey Zoo, and they will be bringing some animal ambassadors to greet and meet. And so we're really looking forward to that. We will have representatives from Africa Matters and Native Animal Rescue of Santa Cruz. So come on down on October 8th. Doors open at 6:30, and come in and meet some other animal lovers and supporters and learn some new things. So it'll be a really fun time. And you can buy tickets at Eventbrite. Just search for Cheetah Conservation Fund, or you can go to cheetah.org and look up their events for the fall tour. And I will have a link to the website and the tickets in the show notes today. So thanks again, everybody. Hope to see you in October.
Thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio. Links and resources to today's topic are in our show notes on iTunes. We appreciate your dedication and interest in protecting our natural world for future generations. If you like what you heard, please get involved by volunteering, donating, and sharing these podcasts with your friends. It also helps us to inform more people if you take a minute to leave a rating or review on iTunes. Have a great day, and thank you for listening to Be Provided Conservation Radio.